Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, Ultiworld senior editor, Keith Rayner. It is Friday, December 10th. Thank you for being with us. It's starting to feel like the holidays a little bit. And Keith, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Miles is like hitting this like singing and talking and repeating phrases phase of his development. So I've been like, entertained by it. It's definitely funny to see him like engage with stuff in this way. But also he's like hungry for stuff to look at. So we're like always like looking up videos, and like Jules and I will try and get him to watch something that we liked when we were a kid, and he's not interested. He wants to watch what he wants to watch, and he wants to watch some stuff on repeat. Even just the same like part of the thing, he'll just want to watch it over and over again and read it over and over again. So like it's been a wild ride a little bit around our house as we're like adjusting.
That's awesome.
We end up like watching a lot of YouTube videos and stuff. But I've been avoiding, there's one particular song that I've been avoiding. This is the most popular video on YouTube. I want you to try and guess what I'm talking about here. This is the only thing on YouTube with more than 10 billion views.
More than 10 billion views?
Yes.
And it's a song you're avoiding?
Yes.
So it must be some child song. So my initial inclination would be Gangnam Style by Psy, but that's not a song you would be avoiding to just play for Miles. I'm going to go with Baby Shark.
It is, in fact, Baby Shark. Baby Shark is the most popular thing
that's
on
so
YouTube.
Crazy.
An insane amount of views. I really was stunned to see this.
Have you watched is it Frozen? I feel like that's the one that the kids that I know are obsessed with, the Let It Go song. I'm sure that's up there on YouTube too.
I'm sure it is. We do a little of Cocomelon, which is like this like little kids channel. There's two of the top 10 videos I think are Cocomelon videos. Like one's like maybe like Old McDonald or something. But no Frozen yet. We'll see once he starts getting into like more fully fledged content, what movies he attaches to. He isn't quite, the only movie that he's really attached to is My Neighbor Totoro, which he watches to go to bed. Yeah, I know it's pretty advanced, but he yells stuff with the TV when the characters yell it now. This is like one of those new things. The characters will all yell something and he'll just yell too. So it's we'll see what stuff he grabs onto over time. Hopefully quality content. Maybe Deep Look.
Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about the U24 teams. We're going to make some predictions, talk about our locks, talk about our likely players, some dark horses, etc. Because we are expecting to see the rosters coming out sometime here in the next couple of weeks. Tryouts are all wrapped up a couple weeks ago. Before we get to that, though, got a couple of various notes here. I had a chance to check in with Grant Lindsley from Pony, who, of course, had that terrible collision with Aaron Bartlett in the semis of Club Nationals and was knocked unconscious for like 20 minutes. Really scary. And I talked to him about a week ago, and there's a Q&A transcription of their conversation up on Ultiworld if you want to check it out. But the good news, Keith, is that he's been getting progressively better. And he's, as of last week, was back at work, I think working remotely, but like working for the first time since the injury, and is at least feeling like things have steadily improved every single week. The bad news is that, what we had initially heard is that he just sort of had a severe concussion, which obviously that's not good either, but this seems to go above and beyond that. He describes it as a traumatic brain injury. He actually had some brain bleeding. There was a question of whether they were going to have to do emergency surgery on his brain, which is obviously really bad. Luckily, things didn't get worse while he was in the ER in San Diego, so that was not required. But, he's still dealing with dizziness and fatigue and all of the things that kind of go along with that. He said he slept for basically 5 days straight after the injury. Like the only thing he did was wake up to get fed through a tube because he lacerated his mouth and couldn't eat. and go to the bathroom. And then he was sleeping. And that was the only thing that he did for 5 days. So really pretty serious, scary stuff, but hoping that he can make a full recovery. And he says that he's hoping to be able to play Ultimate again next year.
It's great news to hear that he's doing okay. Obviously, scary to hear that the injury was like worse than we had originally thought. It was pretty wild to hear about that sleeping story. But I'm a big proponent of sleep. Sleep's an important part of recovery. Your body does a lot of its healing work while you're sleeping. So must have been necessary. And I've seen some of Grant's updates on social media. It's great to see that he's still able to be with his family. I know that his child is actually pretty close in age to Miles, if I'm not mistaken. So definitely have something going on there. And he's got his book, right? That's come out. So
he does. It's not out yet. It's coming out in April.
Coming out soon. So it's pre-order. So it's available pre-order. Mediocre Monk. So I don't know if it's too late for him to go in and be like, now I have a new thing to add, a postscript of this strange part of my life that's going on and how I'm dealing with it. But it's probably totally unrelated.
I'm about halfway through the book and it's very good. I encourage everybody to go get pre-order. Link is up on the website. So hoping that he can make a full recovery. Sounds like that's at least a possibility. So crossing our fingers, and shout out to all the people who've helped Grant over these last few weeks. Pony players going and like taking his kid out on walks so that Grant could just rest. Really, really cool. And, we know how great the Ultimate community can be in situations like this. Let's see. Before we talk about Masters championships and regionals news, Keith, the Minnesota Windchill and New York Empire played at halftime of the Vikings game. We've seen this quite a few times now with the AUDL, and we got it going on again, going on the field at halftime, 50, 60,000 people watching some Ultimate Frisbee. What'd you think about it?
This was actually, to me, this is one of the bigger stages for even these events. I mean, they're at a pretty like serious. This isn't a preseason game or whatever. They're like dead in the middle of the season, and like the Vikings have a great record. I don't want to say they're really good. They have a great record. And you have the team from New York coming in, like seems like kind of a big deal. And I got a chance to watch the AUDL's video of this, and it's cool. Like I'll never get over hearing that like moment of the disc being in the air on a huck, and you can literally hear the crowd building to see what the outcome is going to be, like that crescendo. Like that is an incredible thing, and I'm sure the players got a ton of fun out of it. That said, I think they played a 6-minute game or whatnot. They were doing everything they could to make it fast. Like the next line was literally coming on right after the score and just running directly into the pole. So they were trying to keep it moving. But it was clear that there was a directive here, which was throw it long, because that's every single possession was a huck. I'll tell you that, I don't know if you know this, Charlie, hucks are actually a lower percentage odds of completion in many cases than a throw of a shorter distance. And so, shockingly, many of these long throws failed to be completed. Missed layouts or jump balls where multiple players went up for them. I don't think there were any that were like horribly shanked out of bounds, which would have been bad, but the game kind of devolved. And even if they had been making all the catches, I'm still not exactly sure that this is like the best way to present Ultimate. It loses its luster if you just go out there, like if you told somebody that this is what Ultimate was, they just run out there and throw 60 yards and hope it's complete the whole game. I don't know if people would find that compelling. Like, yeah, it's cool when you get a sky, like Thomas Edmonds had this guy that I think that they've been publicizing. There were a couple layout attempts. You can think back to layouts that we've seen in similar environments, but I just don't know if it's the best way to show Ultimate off. I get that it seems like the fast food of Ultimate. Okay, let's just give them the good stuff, the layouts and the skies, the hucks. But I don't know. It's something about it feels like we're not really doing ourselves the best service by just going out there and being like, okay, just throw it as far as you can every possession and hope it works out.
Look, I think I prefer that to grinding unders the whole way up the field.
Yeah, I'm not saying let's go run a zone at this point.
but I get your point. I do think that playing for like trying to play real and take like a power position huck to an open receiver is a lot better than just like take the centering pass and then just rip a backhand as far as you can. I don't know. Like the exposure of this whole thing is cool enough, but I do think that across the board, I feel like Ultimate, like spectator-driven Ultimate, is being focused too much on let's try to make as many like crazy buzzer beater jump ball situations as possible. Like the AUDL is really guilty of this, I think. It doesn't need to be that way. Have some faith in the population. It's the same way with the camera angles of Ultimate. Stop zooming in so much. I get it. Like you want to see people's faces and stuff, but like I watch the World Cup. They are not showing you their faces while the ball is in active play. They'll go tight when they get the chance. You see them. Then they're going to go back to a wide shot where you can hardly tell the players apart. That is how you want to watch the game. Have some faith. It is the world's most popular sport. #1 most popular sport in the world. And you can't see the players' faces most of the time. Stop zooming in so much. It's just little things like this where it's like, oh, well, we have to be NFL football. Like, let it come naturally. Let the huck opportunities and the layouts be a part of the flow of the game. And like, I criticize the AUDL for some of their rule selections because like, why are we still having buzzer beaters in the end of the first quarter? It sucks. It's lame. It's not fun. It's not interesting. Like, okay, sometimes there's a big sky, but like, that's not a natural flowing part of the game. Fourth quarter, sure, it's great. It's awesome. But the rest of the time, like, it's much more interesting if there's strategic value to those moments. I don't know. I just feel like this is a bigger problem than this individual halftime thing.
It's like also like the worst axis for us to pick to compete on. Like, we're not going to be more athletic than major professional sports are right now. Like it's not going to be more explosive. We're not going to be faster than them. What makes Ultimate to me, a layout's probably the coolest thing in Ultimate. Like visually, I get the appeal. But after that, to me, it's the ability to control and bend the flight of the disc that is the thing that makes Ultimate unique. And you have to find a way to emphasize that in some way. Cause to me, that's the thing that you can't do with a ball, right? Like what's the when a ball dreams of being a Frisbee or whatever, like,
yep.
Like that's the thing that's unique about the game. If you could throw, if Patrick Mahomes could wind up a throw, or Kirk Cousins in this situation, they're playing in Minnesota, and throw a curving 60-yard deep ball, like that would be sick. But you can do that at Ultimate. So like work on that part rather than just like, hey, we jump high and we lay out and stuff.
Right.
Like
right.
People are watching freaking Justin Jefferson 5 minutes ago.
Right.
They don't need to see Ben Yot. You know what I'm saying? Like
with all due respect to Ben Yot, he is not Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I don't know. I think it's cool. I think these are like great opportunities for the AUDL and Ultimate in general, really, to kind of like get seen by a much larger audience and have people be like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Like they can throw really far and they can jump and make a sweet catch. Like people cheered big time for the Edmonds Sky. That's cool.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to downplay that stuff. I just think that, we can also have some, there's a balance between grinding unders and against a zone defense and just ripping it deep. So anyway,
overall, it's still a good thing that people are being exposed to Ultimate on this stage.
Yes, agreed.
And that they seem to enjoy it. Like people seem engaged with it. I think I would enjoy that sort of thing if I didn't know anything about Ultimate and I was at a football game. That could be cool. So,
all right. So, quick note: Masters Championships are going to be changing a little bit next year. They're going to a 4-day tournament. It'll be in Colorado. USAU announced this week. And so they're going from 3 to 4 days. This has become like a pretty important division for USAU. Like this is now like there's a lot of people who buy a membership in order to be able to play at Masters regionals and then at nationals. And like this was the first big tournament back post COVID, and it's just like this it seems like super fun. I've never been to Masters nationals, but it seems like everybody just has a great time. And so they're going to 4 days, and then they're also making some interesting changes to the regionals format. They're adding some new divisions as well, like great. What are all the things? Great Grandmasters Women's and Grandmasters Mixed are being added. They're also combining regions. So check this out. They're going to have inter-regional formats to, quote, encourage meaningful and competitive qualifying events. So the Northwest and the Southwest will be comboed, the North Central and the South Central, the Great Lakes and the Southeast, and the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. So the only way these combined regionals would not take place is if each of the pair, each region in the pair has at least 6 teams in the region, within its own region, in which case they would just hold their own regional. But if there's 5 or fewer in one of the regions, then they're going to hold a combo regionals where the bids from both regions will be combined and they will all play together for the total number of bids, which in theory is going to improve the quality of the teams at nationals, because it means that weak regions that are currently sending bad teams to nationals are going to end up playing against better regions where there are better teams who are going to pick off those bids. That's, I think, the concept here.
So they have super regionals where they've combined
kind of a super regional. Yeah.
But then if those regions can't make a good super regionals, then they have to do super duper regionals or mega regionals or whatever.
In fact, they actually just combine all 8 regions into one region, and they just call it nationals now. So per 16 bids per division, up to 16 bids. And then the bid allocation is interesting too. Everybody gets an auto bid if you have at least one team. Then any region that has at least 6 teams gets a second bid. And then if there's any leftover bids at that point, the additional bids go to the largest region and then cascading down in order to the next largest region. So it's all size based, and there's kind of some interesting incentives here. You know, if you are in a smaller region, maybe there's incentives now to not really try to add additional teams, but rather to consolidate talent so that you have like 2 really good teams in order to then go try to pick off bids from the bigger region who has 3 bids or something. But anyway, interesting. You know, we don't talk a lot of Masters here on the show, but I thought the reformatting here makes some sense. It's like people are really enjoying Masters. Let's make it a bigger tournament. Let's have more teams, and let's make regionals more competitive.
To me, yeah, that's the big message here. Is this is an expansion. I mean, they along with this, you know, they're also moving nationals to 4 days, although each individual division only plays on 3 days. So they're really just expanding the size of the event, and then so that they can accommodate the additional divisions. But you know, I think that's notable that they're trying to expand the size and scope of this event and the season they're in, but creating more of a season, so to speak, by having a fuller postseason. So I think this is something that we hear from Masters players. Hey, we want to hear more about Masters, or Masters is cool. please notice us. Not literally like that, but there's clearly energy and excitement around this. And I think you're seeing naturally that player base expand, right? If Ultimate has grown at the lower levels, those people age and become Masters eligible. So I would not be surprised if you see Masters continuing to grow in popularity. And as it does, the structure around having it becomes more and more robust. But this is to me, a significant step in that direction from USA Ultimate. And we don't see them take a lot of big changes like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably one of the first and most obvious impacts of the most recent working group discussions that happened a week and a half ago, I imagine that these changes were already on the way. I mean, Masters has become bigger and bigger, so they're going to continue to support it and try to help it grow. Because keep in mind, like a lot of these folks, while there are players who play Masters who are also competitive players in sort of regular club ultimate, there's a lot of players who are not, and especially as you get into the older divisions. And this is a thousands of people who are buying USAU memberships to be able to play in this tournament. And it's great to have this support created by USAU. And I think that this could continue to be a growth division for a long time.
I mean, not forever. It can't. Eventually, like
it will reach a plateau, right? As people age out, but then they just create Legends division.
No, but I'm saying there's a limit.
Division.
Like that, you can't have. There's a limit, Charlie. There's a finite limit. I'm not going to say
octogenarians. I'm not going to say it. At some point,
people will not be able to play Ultimate.
Keith, you underestimate the power of today's technology. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're talking U24s and the USA National Team. Who's making the team? We're making our picks next. Welcome back to Deep Look. The U24 USA National Teams had its tryouts, and we're expecting to hear the finalized team lists here in the next couple of weeks before Christmas. And so, Keith, it is time for us to, I don't know if we're really going to do like full, these are all the players we expect to make the team, because there's 3 teams. It's kind of a lot to go through all that. But we're going to talk about our locks, players we think are likely to make the team, players we think that probably are going to make the team, and maybe some dark horses as we take a look at the lineups and what we've heard from what happened to the tryouts.
We're going the opposite direction here from octogenarian nationals, going under 24s. I've already seen some thoughts about North Carolina and Colorado, who are both well represented. The University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and Colorado at Boulder, being well represented. I think they each have 7 to 10 people trying out. How many will make the team? I really don't know. I wonder if they run into the kind of the Pony and Fury limits that they run into on the adult national teams. They're like, we can't take too many people from these teams.
So Colorado has 6 players at the women's tryout and 5 at the men's. So 11 total.
Jeez.
North Carolina had 2 for 6 women, 2 for 7 men. So 13. What's the over-under on combined Colorado and UNC players that make the team? There's a total of 24, Keith. How many total will make the team? Over-under 7.5.
That's a good line. I'm going to say over.
Okay.
A lot of Vermont on this list too.
A lot of Vermont.
Yeah, I'm going to say over 7.5.
4 Vermont men's players and 7 women. Wild.
Yeah, get the Vermont hype train going. Yeah, that's a lot.
All right. Well, we can do some more over-unders as we get through this, but why don't we start with some locks? Why don't we start with the women's side of the tryouts? And Keith, where do you start with some locks here?
Well, I think when I think about people who have been in contention for Player of the Year, that's a pretty good lock, or have won the award. So Abby Hecko, Dawn Colton.
Easy locks.
Marie Privier has been on that podium before. That feels like a lock to me.
Is there a world where she threw too many turnovers at tryouts and doesn't make it? I don't think so, but Robin Fennig didn't make the national team. I was just going to say, look, if Robin
Fennig cannot make the U.S. national teams for WGC, then dude, I can't put anything past them.
What a joke that was.
Maybe she was hurt at tryouts.
I don't care.
Maybe,
I don't care. I don't care if she was hurt.
Two-time Pody. Yes. I think that she's just simply too talented a player to decline.
Yeah.
Especially
you put her on D-line,
Maybe the U.S. is on edge now. I mean, we've been getting chin checked a little bit. The rest of the world is not playing, right? Like, U20s, yeah, we're still getting the golds, but like those French teams were on us. You know what I'm saying? Like losing to Germany. Like I could see them being like, okay, we need to put out a talented team. We can't just like this is not a playground anymore. We got to go out here for real. So give me Marie Perivier. I also have Ava Hanna, who's in that conversation. Stacey Gaskill. Those are locks for me.
These are all locks for me too. We're just lined up right now.
All right. So here's where we could have some differentiation. I don't think I have Kennedy McCarthy on my locks list.
I do as well. Although she's like, I feel like she's borderline to the locks list, but I still have her on the locks list. I don't know why I feel like a year ago, I would have been more convinced that she was a lock.
Interesting.
I don't know. She's incredibly talented. And I feel like to have a player like that, you can just be like, go out and play O-Cutter and just dominate your matchup. You don't have to do everything. I feel like in Vermont, she still kind of has to do a lot. She has to be the one doing everything. But we've seen that like on Siege, she was just so dominant as just a cutter. And like, that's what she did. And she can easily play that role on U24.
Agreed. Then I also have Hazel Ostrowski, another top level college player who's had a couple years of like all American level play. So I have Hazel Ostrowski and Carolyn Tornquist. I think maybe fell out of the picture when Dartmouth when their fortunes declined. But this is a player who's had years of elite club experience. Being in the bracket at club nationals and being an impactful player.
I only have her on my likely list, but I can definitely see it.
Even if she was on my likely list, like she's like in the space between likely and locks at like, there's no way I'd put her below.
You have level. Not named the key player yet. I mean, you already said Hecko. You already said
Chloe Phillips is the other one that I have. But the Abby Hecko and Dawn Colton are the most lock to me. Like, and probably Stacey Gaskill. But
yes. I mean, Gaskill, assuming she's healthy, she got hurt at tryouts, I'm pretty sure, or like was limited. She's still gonna make the team. I mean, not only is she just incredibly athletic and talented, but she has incredible pulls, and that I think is like it's like a no-brainer. And you just trust that she'll be healthy and ready to go by the time. And it's the off season for snowboarding, so it's all good.
And they get to, I don't know, is the Olympic dream dead? Maybe they don't want her because the Olympics said no. So we got to say, well, no Olympians then. We'll fire back with our own embargo.
So far we've basically had the same locks list. I have Alyssa Earhart on my locks list. I don't know if you do.
I have her in my likelies column.
I think she's got it on lock. I think we've seen the skill at Carleton and looks like she had a good tryout. I feel like pretty clearly going to make the team.
Because she is such a positional player, like as that, central handler. I feel like I'd really have to start to dig into like, okay, what other players are competing for this role, but is the type of player that they like to come in and be such a reliable presence.
I'm going to hit you with some likelies. I already mentioned I had Tornquist on my list. Lila Bannister, my likelies list.
Breakout player.
Steph Phillips. UW.
I have Steph Phillips.
Is this a reach? Abby Schiltz?
No. I think there are some people who would consider her a lock. I mean, she is so dynamic as a playmaker.
She was just a freshman last year, right? I'm not forgetting that. Who won Rookie of the Year?
She was a freshman.
Did she win Rookie of the Year? I can't remember now.
It's funny. It's been a little while, but yeah, I think so.
Let's look it up. It could have been Devin Quinn. No, Devin Quinn was first runner up. Abby Schultz won it. Okay. Yeah. My brain is correct. Yeah, Abby Schultz. I mean, I just feel like players who are coming out of high school or freshmen in college this year are still, it's hard to be the lock at that age because you're competing with players who are 23, 24 years old. And you're 18, 19. It's just like maybe your turn is in 2 years. But Abby Schultz is the real deal. Like, was so incredibly impressive last year. I still put her on the likely list. Maddie Simcoe is on my likely list. Grace Connerly, Abby Gillock, Jocelyn Sun, and Rita Fetter. I don't think I would have had Rita Fetter on my likely list, but got some hype from the performance at the East Coast tryouts. Edward Stevens reporting there. So moved her up.
Interesting. I like Rita Fetter to make the team. I actually had her in my dark horse category, which is a little bit like a stab at perception, like thinking that people wouldn't expect her to make the team. And I don't quite feel strong enough for likely. I think she maybe was a little subdued at club nationals, which obviously a high bar, but that's kind of where we're at. But a really talented player who people have really gotten to know because she plays at Brown, which is not necessarily a program that people are seeing on the national stage. Really like Maddie Simcoe as well to make that list. Some of my likelies that you didn't get to, I have Tori Gray from Carleton.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
She's just a beastly defender, so I definitely think she has a good shot at making the squad. Going back to Vermont, Sarah Von Depp. She's going to compete for those handler positions, but I think she showed last year that she has more defensive teeth than your average like center handler build, and also can get up the field a little bit and make some plays around the red zone. I think that she has a real chance at making it. I also think Kat McGuire looked very good in this club season and has a lot of mixed experience, so could really earn a spot on that mixed roster. As someone who is a downfield weapon on that front. Julia Hasbrook from UC Santa Barbara had a fantastic year last year. Big thrower, big playmaker, quality defender. I think is in line to become one of the stars in the college division, and has a good shot at being someone that gets recognized at these trials as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of people on my kind of like definitely like their chances list, but I'm not sure that I would necessarily tip them into the, over 60% category, more like coin flippish. Babbitt Bryan out of Middlebury, Erica Birdsong, Emily Posey from Vermont. I feel like the talent is really there, and it feels like the kind of year where she could just have a monster campaign, college and U24s, and just be like, oh, we'll look back and be like, wow, like, why do we even not have her on our locks list? Devin Quinn, Chloe Hakimi. You didn't say her name yet, did you?
I did not.
She's super young, probably too young, but like is actually that good that she could make the team. And they like look at her as like a 3-cycle player. Is that possible? Maybe it's a stretch. What she's like, I actually don't 16, 17.
So yeah, I think she's 16. I don't like that they do this, but I actually think USA Ultimate seems to like to try and take somebody really young who can like carry over a few cycles. I would be surprised if somebody who wasn't a U20 player like wasn't on the roster. Like I expect
I agree with
somebody who is from U20 to make these rosters. And I think, Hakimi was clearly one of the best players on that U20 team.
Yeah. Elsa Waybright, another U20er who I think could definitely make the team coming into college this year.
They did not travel to play on the U20 team, but we're selected.
Oh, that's right.
Could very well be probably my front runner for freshman of the year this year, and it's super dynamic.
Clara Stewart, another player who I kind of put on that better than 50% chance, but not sure it's a lock.
I've Stewart in my likelies. I've Stewart in my likelies as I do Claire Babbitt Bryant and Emily Posey. So some of your maybes I have in my likely list.
I mean, Babbitt Bryan was super dominant in D3 to the point where it was just like far and away the best player. I'm going to be curious to see how, if she makes the team and how good is she in this setting?
I think somebody who's got the experience and the versatility to fit in, has plenty of elite club experience, is a great leader and teammate. I am pretty confident that she's got a slot. Other players that I have on my likely list, Teresa Yu from UNC, Hannah Huddleston from Stanford, Vienna Lee from UC Santa Barbara, Elaine Suzuki, Elsa Winslow, Margot Donahue, a lot of Southwest. And that was like all Southwest aside from Teresa Yu. But those are all players that I have on my likely list, in addition to the ones that we've already mentioned.
You got any dark horses you want to shout out?
Well, we talked about a couple in Chloe Hakimi and Rita Fetter. How about Wilhelmina Graf?
Love that.
I'm going to go in region, stick with my home region. She plays at Yale, but was on Sprocket this year. Is a really physical player, plays great defense, is capable handler, has deep shots as well. She's somebody I would keep an eye on who I think people aren't going to think about because she doesn't go to a school that is on the national scene. Kira Flores from Virginia, Sophia Palmer from Washington. Palmer, I think, has kind of like a role player role with Washington, a really deep Washington team, but I think that could actually play pretty well. I think she's going to be really adept at playing with a lot of top level players, having played with mixtape and national teams prior. So I think I could see her finding a spot on these rosters as well.
All right, let's turn our attention over to the men's side of the board. I'll take us through some of my locks. First and foremost, players that come to my mind, Henry Ing, super lock. Hayden Austin Nab has been so impressive lately. I think Riley Kirkman Davis, Jacques Nissen, Danny Landisman, all players who I think have clearly shown that they're going to be key players on a U24 team. Going down the list a little bit further, I'm curious how many Colorado players end up making the team. I'm going to put Calvin Stoughton on that list for sure. I feel like I doubted a little bit last year, and that was wrong. I was really
club season was pretty convincing.
Yes, exactly. Ben Dameron from UNC, Axel Agami, I think has been building up. Did he make the last team? I can't remember. It's been 4 years, so like he probably didn't. But he was impressive 4 years ago when he was a freshman in college, I think, at that point, 2019. Let's see, the last two on my list, Aiden Downey out of UGA and Declan Kervick from Vermont.
Wow. So up until the last moment, we had the exact same list, and we have two different people in these last two lock slots.
Ooh,
I don't have Downey and Kervick. Kervick's your U20 rep if we're looking for one. And I thought was probably the best player on that U20 team. He's really good. So I don't have Downey or Kervick. I have them both in my likely category. And so I'm betting that my locks are also in your likely category. I have KJ Koo. I am shocked that you're leaving him off. Just look, has been one of the most productive college players. Everybody who plays with him raves about him. It's wild to me to not have him in the lock category.
Listen, he's obviously in my likelies category. Yes, I just feel like it doesn't feel like a lock to me.
This is the guy who's been on the D-Pody and O-Pody podiums.
I'm not denying that he's incredibly talented. I think that there's just a couple little warning signs. Like, to me, it feels like an offensive player, so you have to really be able to bring it. And he got clamped up last year at Nationals when they lost. And I just worry a little bit about that. And, how does he fit in that tryout situation? Super talented. I think he has a better chance than Calvin Brown to make the team, but that's because of Calvin Brown's injury situation. And I don't know where his fitness has been at. And we have a little less information about the West Coast tryout. So, look, I mean, I won't be surprised in the slightest. I think Koo is one of the last people off my locks list, but I don't put him in the lock.
Okay. The other one I have is AJ Merriman.
Yeah, he was a consideration for me too. He's on my likely list.
Interesting case to have a player who's not really competing at the college level, but I think because there's no shortage of tape, it's not going to be hard to like get a sense of what he's about. Obviously a really explosive, dedicated player who puts in a lot of work to try and learn and understand the game is, been someone who's like outspoken about trying new things. So I think that could work for or against him, but I think that kind of dedication to the game is something that's going to be attractive on top of the athletic tools that he brings. So I have Merriman in my locks. He's
a defense first player, which I think is a benefit to him.
Yeah.
I do think the hesitation that I had from the lock category, players who don't, and this is not really specific because he's not like playing elite college ultimate or something, but players who do not play on like well-established premier coaching teams in college tend to have a little bit of a disadvantage in these tryouts because there's just a level of comfort with the systems that these coaches are going to be running when you're coming from one of those programs that isn't necessarily there for people who are playing at Grand Valley State or Grand Canyon or, are not college players. So that doesn't at all mean they're not going to make the team. I just think that some of those players have a sort of a systematic advantage because they're in these systems that the coaches are going to be using at asking players to run at tryouts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think you get over that somewhat through playing in other environments where you're not asked to do that. So players like Merriman, or you mentioned Grand Valley State, you think about Matty Simcoe playing in the mixed division and playing with hybrid. That stuff is, I think, going to show, hey, this is a player who knows how to integrate into a system rather than be the focal point or just be the system. Sure. Do you want to take a look at our likelies list here? We'll see where we have.
Yeah. So obviously, I have Merriman and who was the other player that you just named?
Koo.
Oh, Koo. Yeah, of course. Calvin Brown is on my likelies list. The other Declan at tryouts, Declan Miller.
Yeah,
over under 1.5 Declans. Yeah, I know
so
he's young. He's really young, but I think
they both make it is the question. Yeah,
maybe I should.
I think if I had to pick, I'd say they both make it. Oh,
really? Okay.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick, but I think it's more likely they both make it than that they both don't.
So let's see. I have Erica Brown on this list. Orion Cable. Let's talk about Orion Cable. Orion Cable, from a talent perspective, is an easy lock. But I wonder a little bit about, like, we've seen players of his caliber not make the team because of attitude reasons. And it's a conversation about him. It's a conversation about him. I think he's probably too good to not make the team. And maybe he was perfect at tryouts and did all the right things, but I want to point that out.
Yeah, I think that in that situation, I would expect the coaches to mostly look at, like, okay, how was he as a teammate at tryouts? Like, how did he interact with us at tryouts?
Sure.
So if we haven't heard any red flags, then from a talent standpoint, he's a lock. But
remember, it was Babbitt, right, that like left tryouts early and hadn't communicated it beforehand to do an AUDL thing, and then they didn't put him on the team. That was crazy.
I mean that sounds a lot like the kind of stuff that we've heard about around Cable in over this past couple college seasons. So
pretty insane that Babbitt wasn't on the U24 team when you really think back about it. Mark Munoz is on my likelies list. Jack Brown, a couple of Seattle guys. Now here's my go in my bag. Well, Nate Little from Temple.
Love it.
Theo Shapinski from Michigan. Jake Thorne from SLO. And then here's a couple guys who I think are maybe like more stretch likelies. Fred Farah from Maryland.
Okay.
Of Truck Stop and Breeze. Who I think has like the right skill set to make this team. Like D-line grinder, like really good defender. Has been getting reps at the high level. And then Dylan Hawkins. I don't know if that's a stretch or not for you, but
let the NC State celebration commence. I mean, the hype around this guy and the UNC celebration, now that he's on UNC, Which one does he count for UNC?
The North Carolina people, not just UNC, but just in general, the North Carolina people, they overhype their players. I'm sorry. I just have to be honest about it. They are like, oh, this guy from UNC Charlotte, you don't understand. Like, he's going to make the team. He's a beast. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like,
look, if you go to UNC and you got rings on rings, you could do that. But NC State, you might want to win something before you tell us about how great everybody is. Like, Dylan Hawkins walks on water as far as I've heard from NC State.
I got him on my likelies list. He's very good.
He's not on my likelies list, but he would be on the next tier, like the maybes for me. I was actually a little disappointed with what I saw at college nationals. I'm not gonna lie, but I also have like, I'm so removed from rooting for NC State right now. I'm like, I can't do it. I know they're gonna sucker me back in by the time it comes around to regionals again, but I'm sure they will have won me over.
By the way, I accidentally didn't put him on my list because I was trying to figure out whether I wanted him on my locks or my likelies. I'm gonna go lock for Leo Silva Fernandez.
Okay, I have him in my likelies. I love his game, to be honest with you. If I were the coach, I feel like he'd be a lock. But I feel like I need to see it again at the really high level.
I feel like we've seen it. I mean, even a couple of years ago, he was really impressive for like Dragon Thrust. I forget where he played club this year. Was he on Dragon again?
I don't think he was. Maybe he didn't play club this year.
Maybe he didn't play club.
So some of the guys I speaking of club season, that's definitely influenced some of my likelies for players that otherwise might have not been present for me. Leo Gordon was like arguably the best player on his team, so that'll get you somewhere for Dig. I couldn't believe how good he was. It's like, wow, this, if he plays like this in the college season, he might win Player of the Year. He's very good. Tristan Yarder was awesome at nationals. Another guy with defense first, big puller. So someone who I think is in line for a big college season. Zach Slayton from Texas also had a great club year. So another player in that mold. Another two guys who I think are great connective pieces for teams that do a lot to drive offense without necessarily like racking up a ton of stats, who I think have a good shot of making the team. Turner Allen and Rutledge Smith. Rutledge Smith is awesome. I love watching him play. It's just good, clean ultimate with Rutledge Smith. Turner Allen, a little more of a grinder, but still kind of that like, whatever you need from me to help make the offense go, I can go do that. They're both like pretty good, have decent size, even if they're not like just going to roof everybody, but they can get open and make you pay in the deep space. They can come under, they can put the disc. Like I love the versatility and the ability to just integrate into any type of offense. So I like Allen and Rutledge Smith to have good shots at making the team.
I like some of those digs. Leo Gordon's on my likelies list. A lot of those other guys I would say either are maybes or didn't make my list. Some maybe folks for me. Matt Chambers. Yeah, Michael Arbatine, who I was very impressed with all of last college season for Florida. Couldn't quite carry them, but very explosive flick huck. I think systematically maybe at a disadvantage, has to play in a Florida system that is very unlike what you're going to be playing on a U24 team, but really solid player. Let's see. I have Rutledge Smith on my maybes list. Suhas Madaraju, Aaron Bartlett, another one of those DC area guys. Kuchuan Ponzio from Vermont, I think is somebody who could definitely make the team. Chad Jorgensen, a little BYU representation.
I have Jorgensen on my likelies list.
I like it. Colin Hill from Barry. I think he's got a shot. Let's see. Asaf Galan, also there on my list. And I'm a little dark horse action. Albert Yuan from Duke.
Oh my gosh, the hype around this guy. Speaking of North Carolina people who get the hype.
I know. I feel like I'm getting
Albert
bamboozled.
No, I think he's a great dark horse pick. He'd be like he's like the most popular dark horse pick. I can see that. Other guys I had in my likely list you haven't mentioned yet: Eli Artemakis, Cole Davis Brand, Felix Morin. Artemakis and Davis Brand obviously having great AUDL campaigns. Artemakis, former Rookie of the Year, and Felix Morin, who I think is going to be a name people are talking about this college season. He's been awesome for Rhino, and I definitely think he's got the goods. Dark horse picks: Simon Covington from Stanford, played with AMP. I like his game a lot. I think is somebody who can be a real difference maker on defense. Erica Brown, that was one you mentioned. Jeremy Koish from Indiana and the Alley Cats. Pretty impressed with him. The Alley Cats had a bunch of injuries this year and had to push some people to step up, and like he was really delivering. He and Lucas Cunieris, who's also in this list. I went with Koish, but I definitely think that would be a surprise, I think, for a lot of people, someone who nobody really talks about. Alex Nelson, after this club season with Mixtape, looked very good. Was not a name that we noticed on the college scene last year with Slow, but I'm expecting big things after the way he played at Club Nationals, and certainly could fill in a great big man role for this team. Go downfield, go get the rock, big layouts too. Exciting player to watch. So he's on my dark horse list.
Well, there you go. I mean, I feel like it feels like we've named a zillion players, but actually that's about how many players are going to make the team that we've named. And
there's a lot of players in between. Like Charlie did a maybes list. I didn't really, but I had a bigger likely list. There's a lot of players between here and there. Like there are not a lot of players I look at on this list and I'm like, yeah, no shot. No chance. There's few and far between.
This is the most difficult process I feel like I've had to look at a U24 because we haven't had a selection since 2019. And we've got the like weird extended college eligibility, where that means that players who are not eligible for U24s were the biggest stars in most cases of this past college season. It makes it really tricky to figure out like who's going to make the team. I think I feel like one of my lock picks is that there's going to be people who make the team that I basically haven't ever seen play Ultimate. And that's an interesting situation to be in. But there's like a bunch of names on here who I'm just really not familiar with. And I'm sure that some of them are going to be impressive. And, obviously the bulk of the team is going to be players we already know a lot about from top tier college Ultimate or club. But I do think we're going to be in for some surprises this year, more than the average.
There's a lot of like off the beaten path schools too, like not major programs in the list. Some players who don't play at college, and then especially on the women's side, there's a lot of players from the U20 team, and I just don't know how they're going to handle those players. I think that's an area in which like I feel like I'm kind of looking into a black box, like trying to figure out what are they going to do with Caroline Stone or Elise Friedman. These Chloe Hakimi is one we mentioned. Chagall Gelfand was one of the best players on that U20 team. Rachel Chang just came off an insane club season. So like, are these players really in the running? Like they're getting the tryouts. So I got to think they're in consideration, but I don't know how they compete with some of these older college players. And like, I know there's also people who kind of take issue with like, do we really need these players to get more chances at US national teams rather than letting some of these other players who haven't had a chance, get their chance to shine? Like, I don't know. So, are those things that they're going to consider? Is there like a limit on the number of U20 players that they'd be willing to take? Maybe there's so many of them that are so good, they're like, oh, we want to take all of them, but we can't. Like, I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see how these shake out. There's just so many different iterations that make sense to me.
I mean, it's a whole separate conversation of whether these teams should be designed for maximizing the possible winning chances versus designed for representing the entire United States Ultimate group at this age level, and taking players from parts of the country that maybe wouldn't normally have somebody on the team. We don't need to go down that philosophical discussion today. I think in general, what ends up happening is the coaches pick the best players they can possibly pick with only marginal considerations for, well, let's take this player from this school that has no representatives and not take the sixth player from Colorado.
Yeah, but it's like, how much do you let those 2 days, those, 12 hours of Ultimate tell you about a player
versus all the tape you have of them from
the tape or the personal
club
experience or, times that you've coached with or against these players or whatnot, or it's
a combination of both. And the fact is,
it's all
a player who's proven it for a long time at the college level is going to have a better chance to overcome a weak tryout or getting hurt at tryouts or something like that than somebody who doesn't have that experience. And that's just part of the game. Sorry.
Talented group, and I'm very curious to see who our surprises are going to be. Because
any chance these teams don't win gold?
You can't say there's no chance anymore. Like they're going to be the favorites and probably the heavy favorites, especially with like it feels like Canada's taking a step back. Although who knows what they're going to show up with Mika Kurahashi crushing everybody. But after what we've seen this year, it felt like Canada took a step back, and so that's been off in the top competition. You can't say that they're like locks to win gold though. We've just seen too much good stuff.
Is Orlovskas still eligible?
Would Orlovskas be the best? I think he would be the best player, right? Like if he shows up to U24s, he's the best player in the field.
Probably.
Would you take Arvydas Orlovskas or Henry Ing?
Well, that's the other player, right, who comes to mind. I mean, Orlovskas right now today. So if I was picking a player for even for my club team, I'd take Orlovskas.
I think so too.
Ing is very impressive, but he hasn't really proven it yet. Orlovskas has proven it.
Yeah, he's really damn good.
Yeah, I don't think he's eligible, but he was really young the first time that he was on the team. So it's been 4 years though, so we'll see. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Deep Look. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with you next week with another edition of Deep Look.